Here's where we are in the governance series. Phase 1, seeing the system, letters 1 to 12, that is complete. We are in phase 2, designing the system. We completed stage 1, entering design. We are in stage 2, stabilizing the core. We just completed letter 17A, hidden drain of decision latency. We are now in letter 17B, seeing through a new lens. A project had been stalled for 9 months. It was a bank in the middle of a 2,000 branch network deployment, one of the largest infrastructure transitions of its kind, who had brought in several certified engineers and project managers. None of them had moved it. The customer was preparing to cancel a significant order. I was brought in without certifications, highly recommended by someone who had seen what I could do. I was given 3 months. I said I would take the engagement on one condition. Give me a direct audience with the person who holds ultimate decision authority. They gave me the director of the bank. I asked him one question. What does success look like to you at the end of 3 months? The outcome that would make you say, this was a remarkable result. He told me, and I went to work. The first day, I did not touch a single technical element. I spent the entire day explaining the project to every person on the team, what we were building, why it mattered, and what each person's specific role contributed to the outcome. People who have been arriving and executing tasks without understanding the larger structure that day, they understood. They knew why their work mattered, and by the end of the day, the energy in the room had changed. The next day, the work moved differently. I rearranged resources to match skill to function. People who had been assigned to roles because of their title rather than their capability were reassigned to where their actual skill was needed. People who had been managing without the knowledge to manage became contributors, which was where their real strength lived. The structure began to reflect what the people actually held, rather than what the organizational chart said they should hold. The project moved. The deployment progressed. At the end of the 3 months, the director called me into his office for a post-review with his direct reports and executives from the vendor. He said, we thought we hired you for your technical skill. What you gave us was a change in our business culture. I asked him one question. If I had told you upfront, before you hired me, that the real issue was not technical, but organizational, that what this deployment needed was not more certified engineers, but a redesign of who was doing what and why, would you have hired me? The director was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I am not sure I would have even known what you were talking about. That answer is the reason this series is written the way it is. The technical door is the only door most organizations know how to open. The governance pattern names governance overload, decision bottleneck, ownership fatigue, rehearsed escalation, preemptive governance are that door. They give organizations a language through which what has always been true becomes possible to address. The human reality is not hidden behind those names. It is what the names make actionable. The director did not hire me to change his organization's culture. He hired me to fix a network deployment. And because I entered through the door he knew how to open, I was able to address what he did not yet have language for. That is precisely what this series is doing. Not disguising the human reality inside governance language, using governance language to give the human reality a form that organizations can act on. Letter 17A carried 5 patterns. It named them through personal story, the music organization, IBM, the salary revelation, the Etch-a-Sketch. It showed what governance overload feels like from the inside, what decision bottleneck does at institutional scale, what ownership fatigue costs the person who carries it, what escalation paralysis looks like when the signal never travels, what reactive governance produces for the organization that was winning and lost the distance. Those stories are not changing in this letter. The patterns are not being revised. What is changing is the orientation from which you read them. Letter 17A asked, what happened? Letter 17B asks, what becomes possible? Not the content, the lens. Governance overload, seen through the new lens. In letter 17A, in the Le Mans scenario, governance overload was the system that never designed the rotation. Every decision flowing through one person. The driver at hour 6 who is still in the car because no one planned the handoff. The music director who could not sustain what he had built because he had never designed for it to exist beyond himself. Through the new lens, the question is not what the system failed to do, it is what becomes possible when the load is designed to be shared before the weight accumulates. Organizations that design the rotation before the race begins do not discover governance overload in the exhaustion of their leaders. They discover something different. The capacity that was already present in the people around those leaders, waiting for a designed pathway to carry it. The rotation is not a concession to limitation. It is the design that allows the system to sustain what it holds across the full distance. The question is not, why did no one plan the rotation? The question is, what does this organization hold that has never been given a designed pathway, and what becomes possible when that pathway is built? Decision bottleneck. Seen through the new lens, in letter 17A, the engineers who could see what TCP/IP represented, decision bottleneck was the culture that filtered truth before it could travel upward. The signal already present in the market, the structure that had no mechanism for unwelcome perception to reach the people who needed it. Through the new lens, the question is not what the leaders failed to hear. It is what becomes possible when the organization is designed to carry truth upward, including truth that challenges what the people at the top already believe. The bank deployment moved not because I brought new technical information, but because I gave people a reason to speak and a structure in which their speaking had somewhere to go. When people understand why their contribution matters, they do not withhold what they know. They offer it. The organization that designs for that offering, that builds the pathways through which the people closest to the work can speak clearly to the people with the authority to act, discovers that the signal it needed was always present. It simply had no designed pathway to travel. The question is not, why did truth not reach the top? The question is, what does this organization already know, and what becomes possible when it is designed to hear it? Ownership fatigue. Seen through the new lens, in letter 17A, ownership fatigue was the sensation of carrying too much for too long. The joy draining out of playing music that was once meaningful. The roller coaster becoming disorienting because the rider was carrying everything they owned onto a ride that was designed to be exhilarating when you arrive at it unencumbered. Through the new lens, the question is not what the system took from the person. It is what becomes possible when ownership is designed to fit what a person can genuinely hold. When the scope is right-sized, not reduced, but designed, the person inside it recovers something, not just energy, the capacity to do the work with the depth and focus that real ownership requires. The music that was exhausting when every note of the entire system had to pass through one set of hands becomes something different when the load is distributed to the people who were always capable of carrying parts of it. The question is not, why did the joy drain out? The question is, what does this person hold, and what becomes possible when the organization is designed to let them hold it at the depth it deserves? Rehearsed escalation. Seen through the new lens, in letter 17A, escalation paralysis was the absence of a designed answer to the question of whose voice governs when visibility drops. The smoke on the racetrack that reveals the missing pathway, the signal that never traveled because no one had rehearsed what to do when the signal arrived. Through the new lens, the question is not why the escalation didn't happen. It is what becomes possible when the pathway is built and rehearsed before the smoke arrives. The driver who drives through the smoke does so not because they are braver than the driver who freezes, They drive because the answer to whose voice governs this moment was designed before the race began. The trust architecture was built in advance. When the smoke comes in the form of a model failure, a regulatory inquiry, a board question no one anticipated, the organization that has rehearsed the escalation does not hesitate. They already know. They drive. The question is not, why did no one escalate? The question is, what becomes possible when the organization has rehearsed the moment before it arrives and the person in the smoke already knows whose voice governs? Preemptive governance, seen through the new lens. In letter 17A, reactive governance was the team that was always one incident behind. The tire changed after the blowout. The field strategy adjusted after the competitor pulled ahead. The governance framework built after the regulatory inquiry, after the model failure, after the board asked the question no one had an answer to. Through the new lens, the question is not why the organization was always responding rather than leading. It is what becomes possible when governance is designed for hour 23 rather than the starting flag. The organizations that win the distance are rarely the ones that were first. They are the ones that asked before the race began, what will this system face at hour 23? And what do we need to have designed before the first hour starts? Preemptive governance is not caution. It is the highest form of strategic confidence. The organization so prepared for what is coming that it can move freely in the present because the future has already been designed for. The question is not, why were they always one step behind? The question is, what becomes possible when governance is designed not for the conditions at launch, but for the conditions at the distance? The bank director's statement has stayed with me since that engagement, not because it was surprising, because it was honest. He said he would not have even known what I was talking about if I had named the real issue at the start. And he was right. The language I would have needed to use, organizational psychology, human systems design, the governance of how people hold authority, and how truth travels through structures, was not the language through which he could have received the help he needed. So I entered through the door he could open. I used the language he already spoke. And because I met him where he was, I was able to take him somewhere he had not known he needed to go. The deployment moved not because I brought new technical information, but because I gave people a reason to speak and a structure in which their speaking had somewhere to go. That is what governance design does when it is done from the orientation of not diagnosing what is wrong, but designing toward what becomes possible. Not proving the condition exists, the reader already knows it exists. Offering the orientation that allows them to move through it rather than spiral inside it. We thought we hired you for your technical skill. What you gave us was a change in our business culture. The technical skill was the door. The culture was what the door opened into. And the most important thing the director said was not the compliment. It was the answer to the question that followed. Would you have hired me if I had told you up front? He said, I'm not sure I would have even known what you were talking about. That answer is why the patterns in this series have governance names. Not to cover what they are, to give organizations a door through which what they already hold becomes possible to address. That door is now open. What becomes possible is yours to design. Stage 2 is complete. You have named the authorities, you have confirmed the thresholds, you have defended the mandates against the conditions that erode them quietly. Authority shadowing and governance theater. And you have seen what drains a system that was built to last when the design stops at the starting line. You have encountered the same 5 patterns twice. Once through the lens of what they cost, the music that stopped, the 160,000 positions, the signal that never traveled. Once through the lens of what becomes possible, the deployment that moved, the people who spoke, the structure that gave their speaking somewhere to go. That second lens is the one you carry into stage 3. Stage 3 is called seeing clearly. It does not add new patterns. It does not introduce new design interventions. It asks a different question entirely. The governance structure you have built, the designated decision owners, the clear authority mandates, designed decision flow, the rehearsed escalation, the preemptive governance. How do you know it is working? Not on the day it was built, not in the week after it was communicated to the organization. Across time, under pressure, when the conditions change and the design is tested against a reality it was not designed for. Seeing clearly is not a diagnostic skill. It is a governance design capability. The ability to build into your system the mechanisms that tell you before the distance reveals it whether what you built is holding the way it was designed to hold. We are talking about this because most governance systems are built to be launched. Here are the patterns addressed in this letter. Governance overload resolves to design decision flow. Decision bottleneck resolves to distributed decision authority. Ownership fatigue resolves to defined ownership scope. Escalation paralysis resolves to rehearsed escalation. Reactive governance resolves to preemptive governance. Stage 3 is about building governance systems that are designed to be seen clearly, continuously, and before the signal that something is drifting becomes the silence that follows when something has already gone. The next letter begins there, not with a new pattern to name, with a question the previous 17 letters could not yet ask. How do you see what is actually happening when the distance between the boardroom and the ground is precisely where the integrity gets lost? Thank you.